And now, introducing a man whose powers stretch beyond the ordinary. He got the government to keep daylight savings year-round, and he got Major League Baseball to put the ghost runner back on second base in extra innings. Phenomenal cosmic powers, itty-bitty broadcasting space. He is Glenn Clark.
Good morning, it is Glenn Clark Radio. I am Glenn Clark. He is Paul Valley. Papa Cass is back. Good to have the whole team back, although Jordan's away this week. Jerk. Nashville. I'm going to Nashville.
What an idiot.
Yeah. Who goes to Nashville? Actually, but Cass is back, and we like that. A lot to do on the program today. Coming up in just literally a minute, former Eagles and Browns president Joe Banner is going to join us. Joe Banner was on Twitter the last couple days talking about Lamar Jackson and how he thinks that Lamar Jackson might actually be kind of brilliant for not having an agent and how well he might be playing things. He's going to have to explain that to me. I don't really care about the agent side of things. I care more about the why isn't Lamar Jackson paid already side of the conversation. If you're not paid yet, I don't know how brilliant you can be. But Joe Banner can explain. He certainly is far smarter than I am. Also coming up this morning, we are going to check in with Patrick Stevens as we do every Tuesday. Really unique story of a Baltimore boxer named Yahu Blackwell who's going to join us. He's got a big fight coming up in the Dominican. And a little bit later on this morning, Derrick Gordon, as we continue to kind of get to know new Maryland basketball coach Kevin Willard. Derrick Gordon was the first openly gay player in college basketball history, and he played at Seton Hall for Kevin Willard. So we're going to chat with him about what his experiences were like and what we should know about Maryland's new basketball coach. All of that coming up. I'm sure Papa Cass has a top 5 for us as well. So all of that coming on today's program. Today's show is brought to you by Live Casino and Hotel and the FanDuel Sportsbook, where you should be getting your NCAA tournament bets in now, because any bet of $50 or more made on any NCAA tournament game can register to you to win a $500 bracket bonus. But you got to be a Live Rewards member. So get down to Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Get your $50 bet in the FanDuel Sportsbook, but while you're up at the window, say, hey, I'm not a Live Rewards member. Could you help me out? And the friendly people there will get you signed up so you can register that bet. 10 Live Rewards members will receive a $500 bracket bonus. And breaking news, whenever it feels like breaking, our next big event in the FanDuel Sportsbook will be April 4th for the NCAA championship game. Rodney Elliott and I will be hanging out with you on that Monday night for the big title contest. Looking forward to that. Let's talk a little football here at the top of the show. Joining us right now, he is the team president of both, or the former, not current, the former team president for both the Cleveland Browns and the Philadelphia Eagles. And he really got me interested in a tweet that he sent out the other day about Lamar Jackson and why perhaps his decision to not have an agent is somewhat brilliant. Joining us now, he is Joe Banner. He's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Joe, it's Glenn and Paul in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you, sir. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning.
My pleasure. Happy to talk to you guys.
Joe, I'm really interested in what it is that you had to say about Lamar Jackson, not because I inherently, disagree. I guess I would start by saying, what would the advantage be to any NFL player to not have an agent as they go through this type of process?
Well, I don't suggest they go through the process without any assistance.
Okay.
Which is different than having an agent. There are currently kind of advisors and lawyers that have formerly been agents in some cases, and others that are lawyers with extensive backgrounds in negotiations who either know or could easily study up and adequately know the rules, which after that, it's just a negotiation. So those are very, very qualified negotiators. So I generally don't advise players to not have some active representation, and I usually think it is an agent that's best. So my comment was really in the context of people that were criticizing him. One in particular that said if he had an agent, he would already have a deal, and it's a big mistake to not already have a deal. Well, I think we've now seen enough to know that his patience, as with some of the quarterbacks, was basically a bet on himself And his contract is now going to be a lot bigger than it would have been if he did it last year.
So let's talk about that. As you said, Lamar is playing this a lot smarter than he's getting credit for. I think there was one concept that I saw of wait for Aaron Rodgers and Matt Stafford to get their deals. And now you've got the numbers. You know what the market is, and all of those numbers are north of $40 million, and we think Aaron Rodgers might be upwards of $50 million. That's now what the market is for a quarterback. With that in mind, if we've got all those numbers, Joe, why not do it now? What would be the advantage of waiting any longer at this point to try to get a deal done?
Yeah, so again, I don't recommend that he does wait longer, but I'll answer your question kind of from somebody else's hypothetical position. When players bet on themselves, which is what you're doing when you don't take a deal early, you are taking the risk of your health and performance, which
Right.
could affect your future value. When you wait, if in fact you don't get hurt and the quality of your play maintains itself, the market automatically increases based on the new deals and the increases in the cap. So if your primary goal is to maximize your career earnings and you're willing to take some risk on your own shoulders to do so, the best thing to do is wait. Now, for me, you should be finding the right kind of balance of risk and reward, which doesn't necessarily lead, unless you're trying to leave a team, to a last-minute deal. Now you've maximized your value, but you've also taken on all that risk. And at the levels of guarantees that quarterbacks are getting, I don't think that's wise. But my point really was that the criticism that if he had an agent, he would already have a deal is not correct. He played this correctly, and he is now going to get a bigger deal than he would have if he had done it sooner. Now, he may still want to wait because that's really the true way to maximize his value. Again, I personally, if I would advise him with guarantees well over $100 million, whatever contract he does, if he and the Ravens can agree on an average of the deal, I would advise him to go do it. But if your focus is purely maximizing career earnings and you're willing to take the risks that come with performance and potential injury, the best way to maximize your revenue is to wait out the team until you get as close to free agency as you possibly can.
He is Joe Banner, the former team president for the Eagles and Browns. He's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Joe, it's interesting what you're alluding to because we have heard reports that maybe Lamar would wait it all the way out, do the second franchise tag thing, go 7 years and try to get the free agency. And what blows me away is what you just brought up, the amount of guaranteed money you're perhaps giving up. Yeah, I mean, you hitting the market would be great, but if for some reason the Ravens aren't offering you market value right now, couldn't you also just demand a trade knowing how desperate? I mean, look around at what the quarterback market has looked like this offseason. There has to be some team that's willing to pay you that market value in order to have you, and we've seen how these deals for quarterbacks can be redone. Deshaun Watson just got his deal redone again, and he hasn't played and has all these horrible things that we know about him. I'm really struggling with why there would be any advantage to drive this thing out to 7 years versus saying, hey, look, there's a whole bunch of teams that don't have an NFL quarterback right now. If the Ravens don't want to pay me this way, I should tell them to go ahead and move me to one of those teams that would.
Yeah, and I tell you that if his goal wasn't maximizing revenue, and he appears to be happy in Baltimore, although we don't know that, and some of the decisions make it a valid question, then he should be going and wrapping up the financial security for himself and, frankly, future generations, not even one, multiple generations for him and his family. But we saw Kirk Cousins do this. He said, listen, I don't mind taking the risk. I'm willing to take the risk. What I want to do is maximize my value. And here's the important part, maximize my freedom of choice. So I want to be able to choose where I go. I want to have complete control over that process, and I'm willing to take the risk to get there. And if Lamar's primary goal is to maximize his revenue, that's exactly what he needs to do that. And, I'm a big believer in actions speak louder than words, and his actions say that his primary focus is to maximize his revenue, not to minimize his risk.
I guess the question I would have, Joe, is it maximizing your revenue if the likelihood is you could do a deal now and probably still, again, we're talking about 3 years down the road at this point, you could probably still rework that deal in 3 years to make it match the numbers. It just seems like if you're really that good of a quarterback, and we think Lamar Jackson is, that the ability to go back and say, we need to talk about this isn't going to go away because you always can hold the threat of, I'm not going to come play. I'm not going to show up for training camp. I'm not going to do the things that you want to do unless you constantly make sure that I am paid as sort of the a la the NBA model that we've seen in recent years.
Mm-hmm. Now, listen, you're absolutely right, which is why I would advise them to go do a deal, get this large amount of guaranteed money. If, in fact, it turns out that the contract needs to be adjusted, what we've learned over the last few years is you'll have the leverage to get that done.
Right.
And at this point, in my opinion, the benefits of waiting, where there may be at least some increase in the average guarantee, don't come close to the benefits of doing a deal now and knowing that no matter what happens, you don't have to worry about it. And if at a later date you decide that you want to do something about it to try to get yourself, updated deal, let's call it, you're in a position where we now can see teams are not going to get into wars with their quarterbacks if there's any way in the world they could possibly avoid it.
Right.
So that's why I agree with you in terms of the advice of what he should do at this point. But I disagree with those who claim that not having an agent led to not having a deal, and not having a deal was a mistake. Going forward, I just don't think the risk-reward warrants going forward without a deal. But to this point, it's produced very significant results. He may have been in the 35 to 38 range, and now he's definitely in the 40 to 45 range, and, it could end up being 45, 46, 47 in a year.
It's so funny, Joe, when Patrick Mahomes got his deal, I remember talking to a bunch of different people who were like, well, this is just going to be a Patrick Mahomes. This isn't a number for the rest of the quarterbacks. I remember thinking to myself, like, if you're Josh Allen, if you're Lamar Jackson coming up, why wouldn't you want that number to be? This is the way the business works. Like, a quarterback sets the market, and now this is the number, and you either have a quarterback or you don't, and we all know the terrors of not having a quarterback in the National Football League.
Yeah, which is why, in fact, they have so much leverage and they're using it, very aggressively. And why you're right that, you do a deal now and you get the financial security. If it turns out, say, 3 years from now, which is really only 2 years into a new deal, that the deal is out of whack, you're in a position, if you want to go back and get something done about it. Now, obviously, you don't have as much leverage as if you're actually getting closer to being free. But you still have enough leverage at that point to get a deal done that you'll feel satisfied with. I know players don't want to go into it, and teams don't really either, anticipating that the contract they're doing is going to set up a dispute at a later date. But the fact of the matter is he does have that recourse if he decided to use it.
Joe, we're just another minute or two here with Joe Banner, former Eagles and Browns president. He's with us on Glenn Clark Radio. Joe, on the flip side, if Lamar Jackson really is hell-bent on doing this 7-year thing for whatever reason and maybe breaking the system and getting the opportunity to choose, is there a point during this at which the Ravens have to say to themselves, we've got to think about moving the quarterback? Like, we can't just allow this to play out for 7 years and then watch him walk away. Is there a point at which, if he's just not willing to go to the table, and so far everything we understand is he's been reluctant to go to the table, is there a point at which you have to start thinking along the lines of trading the quarterback?
Well, the answer is yes. I mean, I don't think they're there for a while, and hopefully they don't get there. But, you don't want to be in a position where you could possibly take a star quarterback, and we've seen what even good quarterbacks are worth, and have nothing to show for it. But frankly, you really want to avoid that situation.
Of course.
And I would never get there unless I was really convinced the player's long-term plan wasn't just to maximize revenue, but to actually leave. I mean, Kirk Cousins, he felt like he had been mistreated by at the time the Redskins, now the Commanders.
Right.
And he wanted an opportunity to get out of there. And it was as much about that as it was about the money. He wanted to choose where he played, which for him was partially about the money and partially about other issues. And we don't know if that's what Lamar's motivation is. But if that's what it is, then yes, absolutely. At some point, you've got to go, well, we can't end up in a situation where, even more importantly than the compensation is, we can't end up in a situation where we're waiting so long for him. We end up holding the bag and don't have a quarterback going forward that we think gives us a chance to compete, especially with this conference now. I mean, for a decade, you better have a star quarterback who give up thoughts about going to a Super Bowl.
Oh, my God. It is unreal. It's murderer's row, man. Looking around. Holy crap. Joe, I want to run by you. Every time we have this conversation, inevitably I'll have a listener, and they'll jump in and say, look, it's just too much. They always throw out this number that there's been no quarterback that's taken up more than 15% of a cap that's ever won a Super Bowl. And, of course, they dismiss the fact that the Rams, between all the quarterback money they were paying a year ago, actually had 25% of their cap taken up at the position. But they'll just throw this around and say, you just can't do this. This is crazy. Teams are throwing around wild money when we all know you can't win a Super Bowl this way. You can't build a roster. You should be the team that drafts a quarterback, moves on, and just drafts another one every 5 years. That concept is just crazy to me. I can't imagine wanting to sign up to not have a quarterback every 5 years or 4 years because they might demand a trade. But what do you make of that argument that there's this 15% number, and once you go past that, you just simply can't win a Super Bowl. It's too hard to build a roster the rest of the way, and you should think about being the team that does something nuts and doesn't sign your quarterback.
Well, I certainly don't agree with that if we're talking about a quality quarterback. Now, if you get into the area where you have a quarterback that is only going to win if he's surrounded by a great team, and you go out and pay him $40 to $45 million right now, you're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you're not going to be very successful. But that's such a rare exception. If you have a good quarterback, you have found the hardest thing and the most important thing to find. And the idea that you're just going to roll that over with someone that at least has the ability to carry the team to a Super Bowl,
right?
Just makes absolutely no sense. We've seen teams. I mean, the Cowboys, which is a pretty visible franchise. I mean, they lost a quarterback. It took a long time.
Yep.
The Redskins took almost a decade before they found an next quarterback, and now they're back into this. They don't have a quarterback. The Eagles have really been, since Donovan left, searching for the right guy. They've had some okay people, but they haven't had anybody up to that standard. See, you could literally end up with a decade to find somebody else that gives you a legitimate chance to be a Super Bowl contender. So I'm with you on that. I would never do that unless my hand was just completely forced and it was that or I get nothing. And I just don't even also understand the logic of it. It's just too hard to find, and it's too important. And, yeah, you can cite one or two exceptions over the last, say, 15 years where that has preserved and the team has won a Super Bowl. You could even argue it happened in Baltimore. But who wants to play an odds that something happens once every 15 years versus betting on the thing that happens 14 out of 15 years? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I understand. Look, I would love to have a quarterback at a certain price so he didn't take up that much of the cap. The world just doesn't work that way. And the good quarterbacks are more likely to win Super Bowls than, the Trent Dilfers of the world at this point in the NFL. It's simply the way that it works. Joe Banner, is there anything we can plug for you, sir? I know, of course, it's at Joe Banner 13, but is there anything else we can get a plug in for you?
Well, real quick, if you don't mind, we're working on this website called the 33rd Team, which is it's a group of former NFL experts, head coaches, and general managers on a regular basis, kind of analyzing the NFL news of the day, 33rdteam.com. So I appreciate you giving me a chance to mention that.
Joe, would love to catch up with you again down the road. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning. Really appreciate your insights.
No, my pleasure. Good to be with you guys.
It's Joe Banner, former Browns and Eagles team president, and sort of backing up. I understand far more. His tweet was, I was so befuddled by it. I'm really glad I didn't respond to it because I would have ultimately been wrong. His point is that he's played it smart up till now by not doing the deal beforehand. And I make a good comparison. Josh Allen got $43 million. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback I'd rather have at the moment than Josh Allen.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
There's a real chance that if Aaron Rodgers got $50 million, that if Josh Allen was doing the deal now, he could say, I'm as good as Aaron Rodgers. Outside of Patrick Mahomes, is there any quarterback in the NFL that you would rather have at the moment than Josh Allen?
Lamar.
Okay. I love Lamar, too.
No. Josh Allen's incredible. He's absolutely incredible.
I think he's the number 2 guy in the NFL. I think he is – I understand the argument for Aaron Rodgers, but there's the mitigating factor of him being 40 years old, and we just don't know at some point when it's going to start to fall off. But I think Josh Allen's the second best quarterback in football.
Right.
And so if I'm Josh Allen at $43 million, I was thrilled, right? But the reality is that if I had just let a couple more quarterbacks set the market, it might very well be that number could have been 46 or 47. And there might be some point where Josh Allen says, the hell do I care? Like, what really is the difference between $43 and $46 million per year? I'm good. I'm making $43 million a year to play quarterback. Don't worry about me. I'll be all right, yous guys. I'll be okay. But I get the point. The point being, if an agent had a year ago done a deal for Lamar, it may very well have been $35 to $38 million per year, whereas right now, it would be insane to think he's doing less than Josh Allen's 43 per. It would be nuts to think that would be the case.
I think Joe Banner's absolutely right. He's played it smart to this point because all the quarterback field has played itself out. There's nobody else that's going to sign at this point.
And that's what the moment I'd sent a series of tweets the other day, and that's what always happens. The Stafford deal is the end. That's the end of this. Everything is on the table. There's nothing left. There's no advantage to anyone involved to now not get a deal done.
Yeah.
And that's what makes us infuriating. I was on with my buddy Soren Petro down I do a regular thing with him down in Kansas City. And every time I do it, we revisit this topic because, the rest of the world is as confused as we are about this. And I was talking about this, like, this is it. This is the end of the line. There is nothing more to be gained by anyone in this process by not getting a deal done.
Absolutely.
The last relevant thing, and credit Josina Anderson, the last relevant thing was, okay, let these two guys get their deals done, and now you got all the numbers you're going to have. There's nothing else. There's no other evidence that you can use in trying to establish what this number is going to be. Once you've got those last couple of dominoes that fell, you've got it all. Now go get a deal done.
Yeah, if you're Lamar, you become a top 3 probably paid quarterback in the NFL. If you're the Ravens, you get more cap flexibility by signing him right now.
That's it. There is nothing for anyone to gain any longer. Lamar could try to wait another year and see who else gets a deal done next year, but
why would you do that?
What he's trading off is both the risk of injury and the fact that it's a year in which there was less guarantee that he could have put into his contract.
Mm-hmm.
In a new deal, which can bring a cap number down, you can put more bonus and incentive money in not incentive money, but more bonus money in to guarantee a higher figure. So he's trading off lesser guarantee this year and another year of risk just to see if maybe those numbers inch up to like $48, $52 million. It's no longer worth it. It's over. And again, if the Ravens aren't willing to go there, there's no reason for Lamar to play the game. When people say, well, if you're the Ravens, you just want to see about what happened against the Blitz and you just want one more year. But there's no reason for Lamar to play that game with them. There is no reason for him to say, yeah, cool, I'd rather not get all that guaranteed money, and I'd rather risk it this year and maybe I'll get hurt and irreparably damage the rest of my career. And that's not about him being at any greater risk because of his style. It's just about the nature of playing the quarterback position. Quarterbacks get hurt. No matter what style of quarterback you are, you get hurt. And yes, I'm aware that Dak Prescott got hurt and got paid anyway. I'm not saying it can't happen, but you just never know. You never know when your injury might be the Alex Smith injury. You just don't know. There is no reason. There is nothing left. There is no argument from anyone. And I appreciate that because when I first read Joe Banner's tweet, I'm like, what the F are we talking about? But he was talking sort of about retroactive and now proactive. He says 100%. Now it's time.
Yeah.
It's time to get a deal done. There is no reason to do any of this. The argument about trying to break the system by taking 2 franchise tags because the franchise tag concept isn't fair and so you just want to get away from the team, I hear you. But you're kind of spitting in your own face doing it because you're leaving money on the table. There is more guaranteed money to be made. And if the Ravens, again, we're going to cover every aspect of this. If the Ravens aren't willing to pay it for whatever reason, if the Ravens just say, we don't want to do that right now, our number is $40 million, we're not going beyond that. Then you say, cool, go ahead and move me. Because somebody is. The Atlanta Falcons are feigning as though they're going to let Marcus Mariota be their quarterback next season. The Atlanta Falcons wouldn't jump at the opportunity to have Lamar Jackson instead. The New Orleans Saints are prepared to stroll Jameis Winston out to play quarterback. The Pittsburgh Steelers right now would be going with Mitchell Trubisky as their quarterback. And I get it, the Ravens would never trade Lamar Jackson to the Steelers, but you get the point. We have no idea who the Seattle Seahawks quarterback would be. I guess at the moment it would be Drew Lock. They're all, the assumption now is that both Seattle and Atlanta are likely to use top picks on quarterbacks that no one think is worthy of being a top 15 pick in this draft. If the Ravens aren't willing to pay the number, you demand a trade to a team that is. It's nuts.
I'm inclined to believe it gets done. It makes too much sense for both sides at this point.
I've said that all along, but here we are.
Yeah.
Like at some point, it's got to be acknowledged that there's still not a deal done, and it's nonsensical. I don't get it. And again, there's no big deal if it gets done next week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the argument was let's get the Rodgers and Stafford numbers, and then we're good. Okay, well we should be good. There shouldn't be that much more to do, and sometime between now and Easter, we should be able to get this done. It would have probably been nice for the Ravens to have had that knowledge. There should have been something pressing to know exactly how much money they could spend beforehand in order to try to get it done. But, it's what it is. There is still something out there. I don't think they'll go back the Zadarius Smith route, but maybe it's the difference in whether or not they could still land J.C. Treader to be their center next season.
Or Bobby Wagner.
Maybe, maybe. It's weird to me. Why is Tyrann Mathieu still out there?
I thought he signed for 3 years, $50 million with San Francisco.
I swear to God, I was like, am I missing something? This is the problem with me being overwhelmed with football at this point. Like, Tyrann Mathieu, who is the guy in everybody's mind, still unsigned at this point. And I just completely missed it somehow. Because once the Ravens signed Marcus Williams, I kind of stopped paying attention because they weren't going to be getting Tyrann Mathieu. And I look up yesterday, I'm like, what? Why is that guy still out on the market? What the hell is going on here?
I could have sworn I saw he signed.
He never signed. He never signed. It was very weird to me. And again, this is what I do for a living, and I clearly am paying quite a bit of attention. But it really became once it was Marcus Williams, it wasn't going to be Tyrann Mathieu, so I just stopped. I utterly and completely stopped saying. Boy, that would be something. That would be.
He signs for $2 million to come play with the Ravens for a year.
That'd be really something. All right, today's show, or actually just a reminder, as we talk a lot about sports betting, and Simply the Bets is coming up a little bit later on this morning. We'll be doing that at 11:40, as we do every Tuesday, 11:40 a.m., Simply the Bets. Aaron Oster from VSiN, Bruce Billick, the general manager of the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel, will be checking in with us. We would like for you to know the risks and have a plan before you start gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org. Couple of things quickly. John, we did talk briefly about Bradley Bozeman yesterday. Obviously, we're doing a lot of Kevin Willard on yesterday's show. By the way, there's a rumor that Kevin Willard might be joining us this week. I'm still working on that, but it was offered to me, so I was like, no, not gonna have time. Sorry, wouldn't be able to make that happen. But we are hoping that's going to end up being the case. We did talk about Bradley Bozeman, but there's only so much that I can tell you, and some of it is just sort of, as I said yesterday, educated guessing. Jeff Zrebeck pointed out that Bradley Bozeman was offered a multi-year extension at the end of the year. He turned it down, kind of bet on himself, and the argument now is that he lost. And I understand that argument. The secondary question is, why wouldn't the Ravens have just given him the 1-year deal that the Panthers did? And as I said yesterday, I'm not telling you I know this. I'm giving you my educated guess. My educated guess is that once the extension was turned down, he wasn't coming back to Baltimore. That there was just a definitive break. And human beings make decisions like that all the time where, okay, it's not going to happen. It's time for me to do something else. And somebody can say his agent led him astray because his agent should have stepped in and said, take this offer from Baltimore, and if he didn't know. But we just don't know the details. We don't know that another one of these teams didn't say, we're absolutely willing to offer this for Bradley Bozeman, and then the market opened up and another player fell to them that they didn't think, or their guy that they thought was going to move on didn't, and all of a sudden they said, look, we would have given you that money, but instead we're going to give it to our own guy because we know him. He's our guy. So I don't know that the agent necessarily led him astray here either. I think that we all want things to be wins or losses. It's how we approach everything in life. And sometimes it's not about a win or a loss. Sometimes it's just about being at a certain place in life and being ready to do something else. And yes, I think that Bradley Bozeman believed he was going to make more money than this when he turned down the Ravens extension offer. And maybe I don't know. Maybe there's some amount of regret. Or maybe it really is, at that point, Bradley Bozeman decided, I'm ready to do something else. I spent a few years in Baltimore. I'm ready to see a different scheme. I'm ready to be around different people. I'm ready to do something else. It's not overwhelming money that was offered. I'm ready to do something else. And if I got to go do a 1-year prove-it deal in order to try to get that next year on the open market, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to take a 1-year deal somewhere and play this out for 1 more year and show everyone that I am worth the big bucks. So I think that we try to oversimplify certain situations by looking at everything in the terms of wins or losses for players, for teams, for whatever. And I think there are people that want to project this as a loss for Bradley Bozeman. And I know this is complicated because you guys are going to say, well, you're friends with Bradley Bozeman. I'm not really. We don't go out. Like, we're not friends. I like Bradley. I like Nikki, obviously, a ton. And I think the world of them and always will. And who knows, maybe next year there's a world in which they could end up back in Baltimore. Michael Pierce came back to Baltimore. We thought Zadarius Smith was coming back to Baltimore. Who knows? Maybe that could end up playing out down the road. But I just think that we try to portray these things in terms they don't always fit. There's a little bit more gray area than the black and white in which we paint these pictures. And I don't know that it's as black and white as this being a loss for Bradley Bozeman. It's certainly not a win for the Ravens by any stretch of the imagination because they don't have a center. Like, at the end of the day, whatever it is, they don't have a center. And you might not think that's a big of a deal because you might just believe that the Ravens have a history of plugging guys in that can play center. And for the most part, they do. But, you know, it didn't work out so well a couple years ago. There's some risk involved in not having a center. They perhaps might believe that Patrick McCary is just fine to slide back into playing center, or they might think the world of Tristan Colon-Castillo, or they might be convinced that J.C. Tretter's price is going to come down to a place where they can sign him, or they might believe Tyler Linderbaum's the guy. They know they can get him with the 14th pick, and they can plug him in and play center on day one and feel great about it. They could definitely address it, and it might very well be that when we have this conversation next year, we think about the fact that, boy, they nailed the center position. But it ain't a win today because they don't have one. So you want to call this a win or a loss? To me, it's more just sometimes these things play out the way that they do, and Bradley Bozeman has departed, and that's the way it goes. The Ravens got Patrick Ricard back yesterday. Is that a win? I think so. There have been a few numbers that were – look, you guys cannot like the fact that Greg Roman is the offensive coordinator all you want, but Greg Roman is the offensive coordinator. And you know what that means? They're going to run the ball a billion times. That's what he does. That's a Greg Roman offense. You can want it to change. You can want it to be throw the ball 50 times a game. You can do whatever you want, but they're going to run the ball a billion times.
I think people forget how good, when they're healthy, when they have their guys, how good they are at running.
Yeah, they're really good at it.
They put up over 400 yards against the Bengals 2 years ago.
Historic numbers at running the football. Now, again, I get it. It's not sexy. Whatever it is, we don't like Greg Roman.
I love it.
When it's good, it's a lot of fun. It wasn't a lot of fun last year because they didn't have any running backs. Right. It's nothing we can do about that. Look, man, I don't know what to tell you, but if they're going to run the ball a billion times, they're probably better off having Pat Ricard on the field. Now, to the point that a lot of people made, the trust that you have in the Ravens to find fullbacks over the years, if they had moved on from Patrick Ricard, spent the money elsewhere, and they would have identified someone else to be their fullback, Ben Mason maybe, you would have had trust and faith in them finding the next Patrick Ricard, the way they found the next Kyle Juszczyk, the way they found the next LaRon McClain, the way that they found the next Vontae Lee. I understand the argument that you might make that you believe the Ravens could have addressed the fullback position without spending money on it. I certainly would understand that argument. But they know this guy's good. They know how much better they've been at running the football with this dude on the field. So I'm good with him being back. I'm good with him being back on the team. It doesn't, and again, they let the market set itself over a few days, and it seems like they were able to do it a pretty reasonable number in order to get Pat Ricard to return. So I'm okay with all of that. Is there anything else we need to cover at the top? I feel like there was something else we didn't even really get to talk about all the quarterback movement yesterday with Matt Ryan going to the Colts. weird bit that the Colts are doing where they're just sort of going all in on these stopgap quarterbacks, despite the fact they have a really good roster. I mean, they could probably use one more wide receiver. I like Pittman a good bit, but I think they could have used one more real, legit stud wide receiver.
To me, it just sings the fact that they believe their roster is good enough that if they get the good quarterback,
right,
they're going to go win a Super Bowl. And I feel like they maybe think that they're kind of starting over if they go draft their quarterback.
It's a weird vibe because I get I talk about this all the time. The argument that people make is you can't pay Lamar Jackson Patrick Mahomes money because he's not Patrick Mahomes. And the thing I always say back is you don't have to have Patrick Mahomes to win a Super Bowl.
No.
You just have to have a good quarterback. You can't win a Super Bowl without a good quarterback. If you got a good quarterback, you can win a Super Bowl.
He's Patrick Mahomes to his own team. That's how I look at him.
Okay, fine. Matthew Stafford's not the best quarterback in football.
No.
He's a good one, but he's not the best quarterback in football. He's not the best quarterback in the NFC. He's not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. But the Rams won a Super Bowl with him because he's a good quarterback. And that argument would probably project to the Colts having a chance to win a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan, right? Like if I say all you got to do is have a good quarterback, Matt Ryan was still a good quarterback a year ago. But boy, you're putting a lot in there. You're putting a lot of chips in on being able to do it. And you got a good roster. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, you have the best running back in football at this point. Your defense has been outstanding. Julian Blackmon is a stud. Love that guy. There's a lot of good. Quentin Nelson might be the best offensive lineman in the entire league. There's a lot of good on that roster. But I don't know that it's Rams roster good. And I don't think at this point that Matt Ryan is quite as good as Matt Stafford. I don't think he's far behind Matt Stafford, but I think you could argue he's not quite as good as Matt Stafford at this point. With a bit lesser of a roster, I think you're really hard pressed to fathom. You also don't have the benefit of playing in the NFC, frankly. The idea that team with Matt Ryan is going to win 3 to 4 playoff games against the teams you're going to have to face in the AFC at this point, I'm hard pressed to see it. I get the idea. You got to have somebody. I don't know what it would have cost them to get Baker Mayfield. I don't know what the Browns are looking for. I mean, they're going to have to move him. They have to move him at some point. I don't know what the market is for Baker Mayfield. And if the Browns are looking for at least a first for Baker Mayfield and you were able to get Matt Ryan for a third, I could make the argument that you're better off just doing that. Would I rather have Baker Mayfield than Matt Ryan, though? I think I would.
That's got to be just based on age alone.
Mostly based on age, mostly based on I just don't know that we won't wake up at one point and Matt Ryan just can't do it any longer. Mm-hmm. Mobility too, right? I like the idea of having a bit more of a mobile quarterback in general. Mm-hmm. It's a tough one. I think you should have just been drafting a quarterback. I mean, I just think that's the way it's got to work in this league is you got to draft and figure out if you have a quarterback or not. I think it's a tough sell to think that you can do this with Matt Ryan in that roster. But we'll see. I mean, they'll end up looking genius if somehow in the Murderers Row AFC they manage to win a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan as their quarterback. All right, when we come back in, Patrick Stevens is going to join us to talk more about Kevin Willard, of course. That's on the way. Today's show is brought to you by Glory Days Grill. They're continuing the St. Patrick's menu all month long. So you can get the smoky thigh wings with the Guinness grilling sauce, the Reuben, the Rachel, the shepherd's pie with the Guinness braised beef. Just because we're past St. Patrick's Day doesn't mean it's gone till the end of the month. Enjoy the St. Patrick's menu at Glory Days Grill. Get your order in, glorydaysgrill.com. It is a Tuesday. You got this, Cass? It's a Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
Sports fans, the wait is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. This is your chance to win big right in your own backyard. Bet on every sport with self-service kiosks and watch all of the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
The newest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, we celebrate the 20th anniversary of Maryland men's basketball's 2002 NCAA Tournament Championship, as Gary Williams reflects on how the program rose from the ashes of NCAA sanctions to the pinnacle of the sport, and why his perspective of the title run has changed now 2 decades later. Plus, Juan Dixon, Lonnie Baxter, and the rest of the team relive the moments that ultimately led them to cutting down the nets in Atlanta. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farms stores. And you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Answering Baltimore's calls for help, running in when others run away, working together toward one shared vision for a thriving city. That's your Baltimore Police. But the department needs more good people. People like you. Join a proud new generation of Baltimore Police and make an active difference in your community. Start with competitive wages and excellent benefits on day one. Join for good at bpdrecruit.org.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
The biggest pro wrestling stars today and all time all have one thing in common. You've heard them on Jobbing Out.
Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks.
Thanks for having us, man. Appreciate it.
The great Kurt Angle.
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Matt Riddle.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man.
The champ, Drew McIntyre.
Oh, thank you for having me.
The great Ron Simmons.
Damn.
Keith Lee.
Appreciate you guys having me, man.
Bill Goldberg.
My pleasure.
Charlotte.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mick Foley is with us.
This is the greatest name for a wrestling show I've ever heard.
MJF.
I'm glad you're happy I'm on this show because I'm freaking miserable.
Le
champion.
Chris Jericho.
Le champion.
AJ, Aaron, Brandon, and Glenn are talking pro wrestling every week on Jobbing Out. Find it at PressBoxOnline.com/radio, iTunes, and SoundCloud.
Stay tuned. Your chance to win $1 million is coming up. Probably not from us. You're listening to Glenn Clark Radio.
Underdog Fantasy Football is ramping up the baseball season. You're going to be able to play every day, every week with those traditional daily and weekly fantasy contests you love. But still, the basketball, the hockey contests, and so much more. You can't bet on your phone or your computer yet in the state of Maryland, but you can play Underdog Fantasy Football and feel like you're betting with player props, parlays, things along those lines. And when you use that code PRESSBOX, we match up to $100 on your first deposit, UnderdogFantasy.com, or download the Underdog app in order to get playing with Underdog Fantasy Football. John wants to know, Glenn, what have you heard in relation to Kevin Willard's staff at the University of Maryland? The only one that I know with any amount, everybody seems to believe that Tony Skinn is joining him, the former George Mason standout, who is from the area, from the D.C. area, and was at Ohio State most recently, but had been with Kevin Willard before. And again, that goes a long way to having a local tie to the area. I don't know anything beyond that. I can't tell you anything else about what Kevin Willard's staff might look like. I presume he will be asked about that when he holds his press conference tonight at 6 o'clock down in College Park, as we will chat. Patrick, we need to call Patrick. Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. We only do it every Tuesday at 10:45. No big deal. Literally every week.
Brain fart, right?
Other than that, Paul's like, what? Huh? What are we doing? What are you talking about? We don't have anything scheduled now. Anyway, sorry, yes, he's holding his press conference tonight, 6 o'clock down in College Park, and I assume that will be one of the questions that is addressed to Kevin Willard, the new Maryland basketball coach, is what his staff will look like, and we will find out then. From Joe gets in this morning and says, Glenn, appreciated all the coverage you gave of Kevin Willard yesterday. 24 hours later, do you feel anything much different after the various folks that you have talked to? No, I don't. It's about what I expected it to be. I'm not trying to be curt, but I think I told you in the column that I wrote yesterday, I think Kevin Willard is a very logical, sensible hire. You know, we've been talking about Kevin Willard for months. Patrick Stevens has definitely been talking about Kevin Willard for months. This makes a ton of sense. If you're not blown away by it, I understand. I don't know that Kevin Willard is going to be a great coach at the Big Ten level, but it was a very reasonable hire and a qualified hire for Maryland to make. And there are things that I've heard that I like a lot. And I don't know that anybody can answer whether or not he's going to be a much better NCAA tournament coach now as the coach at the University of Maryland. So, no, nobody's changed my feelings about it in all these conversations we've had. But it is Tuesday, and every Tuesday we chat with our buddy Patrick Stevens, who joins us now, of course, at Discourse, D1S Course on Twitter, Washington Post, USA Lacrosse Magazine. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am well, Glenn. How are you this morning?
I'm all right. You and I have been talking about Kevin Willard for a very long time. One of the first names that was brought up in the aftermath of Mark Turgeon. And I remember one of the conversations we had, you pointed out that, at the time, he was coaching maybe even a little bit over his head based on what expectations were at Seton Hall this season. I feel like some of the reaction to Kevin Willard's hire here at Maryland has been about the thud in the NCAA tournament, that it's just a recency bias, that guy, the guy that just got his butt kicked by 26 points, that's the guy you're hiring as your coach, because a lot of people don't pay attention. On the whole, how would you describe the job that Kevin Willard has done at Seton Hall over the course of the last, dozen years?
Well, I think it's important to kind of understand where Seton Hall was before he got there. Obviously, everybody remembers like Terry DeHare and the Final Four team, the team that was in the national title game in 1989, PJ Carlissimo. And he left, and frankly, they really didn't do a whole lot for close to, really more than 20 years if you include the beginning of Willard's tenure. I mean, they had a Sweet 16 under Tommy Amaker as a 10 seed in 2000. They had a couple mid-level appearances in the tournament under Louis Orr. And then Bobby Gonzalez came along, and that did not go very well those 4 years between on the court and off the court stuff. So he took over a program that was not in great shape. And, there was some help along the way. I mean, I feel like Seton Hall was one of the winners of the Big East's realignment, reinvention, however you want to put it. But getting rid of all of those football schools, in particular Syracuse and especially Connecticut, I think really helped Seton Hall out. And I think he did a really solid job. I mean, when you look at what Seton Hall had been, really a roughly 500 program without very many NCAA tournament appearances. And he's, by the time you get to 2016, it's 25, 21, 22, 20, 21 victories, 21 this year, and 5 tournament appearances. That's pretty good. And he probably, I think it's fair to say, probably maxed out what he was going to be able to do there. I mean, at some point, and it's probably around the 10-year mark, for most coaches, it's probably time to move on. He's been there 12 years. So I think for Maryland, it's a very conventional Maryland hire, right? Like, you think about what are the things that Maryland wants? Well, they wanted an established coach, check. They wanted a guy that had gotten to the postseason, check. They wanted somebody that didn't really have a long trail with the NCAA of malfeasance or what have you, check. All these boxes kept getting checked. East Coast guy, worked on the East Coast for pretty much his entire career, check. And so if you were sitting here trying to craft sort of that logical compromise candidate, and he's 46 too, there's a check mark.
Yep.
And I think we talked about this yesterday privately, but I feel like for Mark Turgeon, the thing that was always going to be held against him was how much he was different from the last guy. And for Kevin Willard right now, I wonder if the thing that will be held against him is that maybe he's a little too similar to the last guy.
No question.
He's a guy that's 46 years old and has been to 5 NCAA tournaments. You know who else was 46 years old and had been to 5 NCAA tournaments?
How about
the guy who was hired the last time? So I think he's an interesting choice. I think he's a conventional choice. I think he's a very Maryland choice. I think the floor is fairly high. I don't know how high the ceiling is, but based on what we've seen from his Seton Hall teams, particularly over the last 6 or 7 years, you've got a guy that's probably going to get you in the tournament mix just about every season.
So I feel like the question that we're trying to answer and acknowledging we can't get the answer is going to come in the coming years when we see how he does. But I feel like what we're trying to answer is the bump up from Seton Hall to Maryland as far as resources, as far as whatever you want to throw in there, the interest in the program, the fact that there's a football program to prop up the athletic department, although, again, yes, it's Maryland football. There's an on-campus arena where they can profit off of that, where there's maybe more local interest recruiting-wise. Maybe kids are more inclined locally to care about Maryland than local kids were to care about Seton Hall. Is all of that enough to close the gap and make him better when it comes to seeding in the NCAA tournament and winning games in the NCAA tournament? And I know you can't give me that answer, but I feel like that's what we're trying to solve.
I think you're basically onto it. And while, we're sitting here trying to adjust the dials a little bit and see which of these things is more important than some of the other things, right?
Right.
I do think that you are talking about a school that, even though it does not have a practice facility, is more invested. It is going to get more attention, even if it's not getting the same level of attention locally that it did 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. I think, too, it's important to remember that none of this happens in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is what is happening with all the other teams in your league or all the other teams in the country to a lesser extent, because that's what you're dealing with in the tournament. And frankly, the tournament gets into a little bit of bracket luck and some good breaks or bad breaks or whatever you want to discuss there. But how are your conference opponents handling basketball? Are they as invested as they have been or will be? Or do they have good coaches? Where are they in terms of a coach's tenure? Like Tom Izzo, how long is he going to be at Michigan State? Probably for a while.
Right.
But he's coached more games in the past at Michigan State than he will in the future. I think it's safe to say. So that's the sort of question that you have there. So how does that landscape change on you over time? And that's something, again, you can't possibly know the answer to that. I think when you look at what the Big East was, like I mentioned earlier, you basically helped a program like a Seton Hall and a Providence, and I'm not knocking either Kevin Willard or Ed Cooley for the jobs that they've done, but their jobs became much more manageable.
Yeah, with no Louisville. Right.
But yeah, there's no Louisville. There's no Notre Dame. There's no Syracuse. There's no Pitt. There's no UConn. Suddenly you've got a 10-team league that's entirely private schools. Now you add UConn in, and that's a joker in the deck again. But overall, I thought he did a really solid job, and I know we're going to talk about it, so I'll drop this little nugget too. When you look at postseason success, which I think everybody thinks is like the big thing against Kevin Willard, I like to do something really simple. What was the projected record based on seed? Let's call it the chalk record. And so Kevin Willard's chalk record at Seton Hall, having been a 6-9, an 8-10, and an 8, would have been he would have gone 3-5, and he went 1-5. So he lost the game last week, which, let's face it, that was not a good performance at all.
Yep.
And then he lost a 6-11 game to Gonzaga in 2016,
which is just hard to remember Gonzaga being an 11 seed at any point. Yeah, right.
And that was also, it should be noted, after they went on a 3-day run in the Big East tournament, and those things are notoriously wonky.
Yep.
And let's also throw in that game was played at elevation in Denver, so all that, I kind of look at that and say, okay, the real issue, if you're going to sit there and argue this, is, well, why wasn't he ever better than a 6 seed at Seton Hall? Well, that's something, that's an argument that you can make, even acknowledging that that's not as easy a job as you think. Mark Turgeon's, chalk record, by the way, at Maryland was 5-5, and he went 5-5. So, you got about what you would have expected. And again, the argument there would have been, why weren't you better than a 5 seed at any point?
Exactly.
Or a 4 seed at any point. So in any case, I don't know if I'm willing to trust a sample size of 6 games to evaluate a coach. In fact, I know I'm not willing to do that. That having been said, that's going to be another one of those unknowable questions, or at least unknowable answers that's floating around out there until you actually see Kevin Willard take Maryland into an NCAA tournament.
Let's cover a couple more things. Patrick Stevens with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. The first report related to a staff is Tony Skinn, the former George Mason standout, who was most recently at Ohio State. I don't know a ton about Tony Skinn. I mean, I know, of course, know him. I don't know as much about him as a coach. Is this the a guy that can keep local prospects locked in? Like, is that the thought that Tony Skinn can sort of corner the DMV? Is he known? Does he have a track record of being that type of guy?
Well, I think the one thing that he is he's familiar with Kevin Willard because he worked for 3 or 4 seasons up at Seton Hall before moving on to Ohio State. And Glenn, you know how I feel about the emphasis on local recruiting.
I am aware, yes.
So I'm going to give the abbreviated version of it, and we can move on from there. Is it nice to get local recruits?
Sure.
Yes, it's absolutely nice. I don't think it's a prerequisite. I think that when you look at building a team right now, even more so in the portal era, you need what? On average, probably 5 new guys a year at this point.
Basically.
5 or 6, just because of the roster churn. And let's assume it's 6, and you're probably going to get 2 of those guys out of the portal. That's 4 guys. You can get guys from a lot of different places. You can get guys from any number of places. It could be from Temple Hills or Turkmenistan. I mean, that's an exaggeration, obviously. But the point being is that, you don't need that many dudes. And what you really need is guys that fit your system, guys that are coachable, guys that can play well together. And it doesn't matter if those guys are local or not. I agree wholeheartedly that there is a value in having those relationships nearby. But that having been said, I don't think it's an end-all, be-all, and I don't think it's something that anybody, certainly not anybody along the East Coast where, we have these things called airplanes and trains and can get places pretty quick, really needs to worry all that much about. I think it's something that it's a piece of red meat that you can certainly throw to folks. But I don't think it's an end-all, be-all. That said, Tony Skinn went to Tacoma Academy, played at George Mason. He obviously knows some guys. He was an assistant coach at Team Takeover for a few years after his pro career ended. So there are certainly plenty of connections down here. But I think as much as anything else, you just need somebody that can recruit, period, not necessarily recruit here.
Yeah, that certainly would be just finding good players. The thing that you just alluded to, Patrick, I would think that at this point, and I've said this a couple times already, that we are at a place where it shouldn't maybe take quite as long to start measuring Maryland basketball in this transfer portal era as we were inclined to say it should have with Mark Turgeon. I'm not trying to define it in any sort of way, but it just sort of feels like it shouldn't be maybe 3 years to start seeing some sort of results as it was in more traditional recruiting eras. It feels like, not that I think that they should be competing for the Big Ten a year from now, I think that would be insane, but that it shouldn't maybe take quite as long in order to build a program now in the transfer portal era.
And as much as I hate to say it, that's probably true, particularly at the high major level. I think there are still things at the mid-major level that are difficult to really figure out. But at the high major level, the terrain. And usually by year 2 or year 3 by this point, look, Eric Musselman was in an Elite 8 at Arkansas in year 2. You look at Nate Oates, he was in a Sweet 16 in year 2. You look at Iowa State this year, which went from 2 wins last season to 2 NCAA tournament wins this year.
Right.
And they're still playing right now. So those sorts of turnarounds are possible. I think we thought we were seeing something like along those lines at Minnesota this year because they got off to a good start. It didn't quite work out that way. Ultimately, I do think that you should be able to see by year 2 in the hunt for an NCAA tournament berth. And frankly, if things go right, you might be able to get there in year 1. But I think everybody should probably not expect anything other than simply a team that plays hard and a team that is, clearly moving in the right direction in year 1. But I agree. By the time you get to year 2 in this era, like it or not, there probably need to be at least the early outline of results.
Patrick Stevens with us on Glenn Clark Radio. By the way, he brought up Iowa State. Maybe one of the more unique local connections left in the NCAA tournament is Isaiah Brockington at Iowa State. Of course, the son of former Coppin State standout Antoine Brockington. And we've talked about it a couple times in recent weeks. It's the 25th anniversary of Coppin State's remarkable upset of South Carolina back in 1997. Give me a team so far in the tournament that maybe you feel different about, that like you didn't think was a title threat or a Final Four threat, that now, being 2 games away, you're like, I genuinely think that they might have a chance to make even more serious noise at this point.
Yeah, I think North Carolina's that team.
Yeah.
I think that given what they did to Marquette in the first round of the tournament, and then handling the ejection and bouncing back from Baylor's rally to win that game in overtime, I look at that bracket and I see three teams they can beat. I see a UCLA team that is obviously really good and really battle tested, but not a team that's just going to overwhelm Carolina, I don't think. And then a Purdue team whose defense remains a question mark, and St. Peter's, which is great a story as they
Wonderful,
are.
Yes.
It's not a team you expect to win two more games. I mean, they could. Nothing says they can't. But I think Carolina, given how well it's largely been playing, is the team that stands out on that front. At the same time, that's a team that has had a history this season of having a random clunker like they did against Virginia Tech in the ACC tournament. So that would be the team that I would say I would not have thought of as a Final Four caliber team a week or so ago, and have to certainly consider the possibility right now.
And I guess we have to say one more time, Maryland lacrosse, quite good, and certainly going to, barring something insane, be a significant favorite as we move towards the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, they basically out-Virginia'd Virginia on Saturday, 23-12. It's the most lopsided victory in the series for Maryland since 1974. Most goals allowed by Virginia in a game since 1978. The team that they allowed 23 plus 2 the last time was NC State of all schools, a team that hasn't even fielded lacrosse in 40 years. So, but yeah, basically just out-transitioned Virginia. Great face-off play from Luke Weirman. Balanced offense, you name it. Maryland did it really, really well the other day. And as Lars Tiffany, the Virginia coach, said afterwards, there's no doubt who the number one team in the country is now. And he is 100% correct on that. And I suspect that Maryland might have an issue or two to navigate in Big Ten play. But for the most part, aside from that game against Rutgers and maybe Ohio State, I think it's a team that's in pretty good shape to possibly get into the barn without a loss again this year heading into the postseason.
Ken Patrick Stevens named the MLB teams that this particular player has played for. You get a little bit more of a respite because I found a legitimate stud who just so happened to get his fourth and fifth teams a year ago.
Okay.
So 5 teams now for a 5-time All-Star who's finished in the top 10 of Cy Young voting 4 times in his career. Give me the 5 teams for John Lester.
John Lester has played for Boston.
Of course.
And the Cubs.
Of course.
He was in Oakland, right?
Most certainly was. That was the year that I was hoping the Orioles were going to land him in the trade deadline, and he went to Oakland instead.
Washington and St. Louis.
There you go. 5 for 5 on John Lester. I, honest to God, had forgot that he started last year in Washington. I had completely forgotten about it. All right, and give me the 4 teams for a 2-time All-Star and a 1-time Silver Slugger winner. Jermaine Dye is our other guy today.
Jermaine Dye was definitely with the Braves.
Most certainly.
And the White Sox.
Yep.
And Kansas City.
Yep.
And I'm not sure I remember.
Oh, really? It was a 4-year stint in the other place.
Really?
Yes.
Jermaine Dye with a 4-year stop someplace. Was he in
1,
Oakland?
That's the one. Very good. 4 for 4 on Jermaine Dye. Pretty good performance. Anywhere in particular this week that you're going to be?
Undecided at this point.
All right.
So it will be a lacrosse site of some sort or another. Probably that Loyola Army game.
Will you be in College Park this evening?
I will be in College Park.
Obviously, for the press conference. At Discourse, D1S Course is how you follow him on Twitter. Patrick Stevens, always appreciate you, my friend. Let's talk again next Tuesday, all right?
All right, take care.
That's Patrick Stevens joining us as he does every Tuesday morning here on GCR. We'll push the break. Want to quickly remind you that you can join a proud new generation of Baltimore police and make an active difference in your community. Start with competitive wages and excellent benefits on day one. Join for good, bpdrecruit.org. Thanks to Patrick for taking the time for us this morning. As we roll along on a Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio, we will have a little bit more Kevin Willard conversation as Derrick Gibson, former Seton Hall player who, of course, was the first openly gay player in college basketball history, is going to join us a little bit later on. Joining us right now, I want to spend a couple minutes chatting about a really unique Baltimore sports story, as our next guest is down in the Dominican Republic getting ready for a huge fight coming up in early April as he'll be fighting for a regional heavyweight title, WBC heavyweight title. And he's got his eyes set on bigger prizes, and he just so happens to be like a super successful businessman on top of it. He's a really compelling story. It's a pleasure to welcome Yahu Blackwell to GCR. Yahu, Glenn, and Paul here in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you, man. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes for us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's great to chat with you, dude. We're really excited about what it is that you're doing. Is there any way you can do like a 30-second version of your unreal story of how you got to this point, from Ghana to the States to Baltimore to boxing to business? You check so many boxes. It's just a fascinating character, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, I came here when I was 2, man, and boxing was just something that was just in me, and I couldn't escape it. I told my mother, and she originally was against it. Not against the sport, but she was just doing what moms do.
Of course.
Didn't want to see me get hurt. And 7 years old, I got started, man. It was a friend of mine who was going. He was a little bit older, and I used to lie to my mother until I was playing over his house. When all actuality, I was going to the boxing gym with him, and I competed in my first amateur bout, I think maybe after 2 weeks of training, and I came back with a trophy, and I think that's how she knew that it was,
like, okay, yeah. Well, we'll support this now. We'll give you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll give you a shot at it. From that point, so how old were you at that point when you got that first trophy, Yahu?
I was 7 years old.
Okay, so you're 7 years old. At what point did you know, like, I might do other things with my life, but I'm going to be a boxer for the foreseeable future?
It's so funny because there were several things that happened to me that let me know that this was what I was supposed to be doing, because coming up as a fighter, it's tough. So you start questioning it, and, you start wondering, man, is this really for me? Is this going to work out? And I ended up boxing a guy. At the time, he was like the man. His name was Spencer Harsley.
Okay.
And at the time, he was like a big amateur star in boxing from the DMV area. I believe he was maybe like a 8-time Golden Gloves champion.
Wow.
4-time national champion. He was all, he had all the medals. And I stopped him in 3 rounds. We sparred, and I stopped him in 3 rounds. And I think that's when it hit me like, wow, I can really do this. And then I started going to training camps with like some of the best fighters in the world, and I was able to hold my own. And that really put the stamp on it for me.
Yahu Blackwell is with us here on GCR. Yahu, there is this sort of Baltimore moment in the sport of boxing that's been occurring for like the last 5 to 6 years, and of course Gervonta is at the front end of that, but it ain't just him, right? Like, it's Malik, and it's Hassim's kids, and it's there's just this unbelievable moment happening right now. How much has that lifted you, and maybe put like an amount of pressure on you to say, hey, I want to be a part of this. I want to be another Baltimore boxer that's bringing the spotlight to the city that you clearly love so much, that is obviously your home. How has that moment impacted you?
It's great because we've all crossed paths, like, at some point in time. Like, I've crossed paths with Gervonta, Malik, all of those guys, like, years and years and years ago. And I even ran into Gervonta at Mayweather's gym. This was right at the time Mayweather had just found out who he was.
Okay.
And we ran into each other there. So it's a big thing for me to, be a part of the group, that's bringing, like you said, spotlight to fighters in Baltimore.
It's a big deal. And the way that you care about the city, tell me about how you got involved as a businessman and running the Ritas and all of that thing, man. Like, This is like, dude, if I was a boxer, I wouldn't have time to be worried about anything. I'd be worried about not dying in a ring. Tell me about how you got involved in all of that.
Rita's began because my mother died in 2015.
Okay.
And Rita's was like the very last thing she had asked for. I was already contemplating getting into business because, I've seen a lot of athletes or entertainers, athletes, the whole nine, that when their careers is over, they go broke. So I didn't want to be that guy. I was like, I didn't put in too much work to end up broke when it's all said and done. And so I was considering doing trucking at first. I was like, man, maybe I should get into trucks. But when my mother was passing, Rita's was the only thing she could hold down. She had no diet.
Wow.
She was craving Rita's like every single day. So every day this maybe went on for about a year. So every day I was going to get her quarts and quarts of Rita's.
Wow.
That's all she could eat. She couldn't eat any, everything else we tried to give her, she was uninterested in it. And so, and literally the moment before she died, I asked her, what did she want? She said, Rita's. So that's how I ended up pursuing Rita's.
That's powerful, man. That is a powerful story, brother. I'm very sorry for the loss of your mother, my friend. But to have something like that and say, okay, I want to do this now for my mom. Oh man, it's getting a little dusty in here, Yahu. It's getting a little. Does somebody? Can you put away those onions over there, Paul? My God. Oh man. All right, so
it was a big deal for me, man. I had to do it.
That's cool.
To honor her, yeah.
That's cool, man. All right, so tell us about being down in the Dominican, and tell us about the fight coming up, and why this one is so important for you.
Well, I'm fighting a guy named Fulgencio Zuniga, and he's a veteran. He's been in the sport for a long time, and he's kind of seen it all. He's kind of fought the who's, and this fight is big for me and for Baltimore because it's for a WBC regional title. And the WBC is the biggest out of the sanctioning bodies. So you have 4 sanctioning bodies in boxing. You have the IBF, the IBO, the WBA, WBO, and the WBC.
Okay.
The WBC is the most prestigious of them all. So to be fighting for a WBC title is a big deal. Not to mention, I don't believe there's ever been another heavyweight champion in Baltimore who's ever had any version of the WBC. So other than Hassan Rocky.
Right.
So to do this would definitely put me as number 2 ever to have had a WBC title coming out of Baltimore as a heavyweight.
And the fight is televised, correct?
Correct. Yes.
CBS Sports.
Yep. CBS Sports will be the host of the fight.
Man, that's a big deal, dude. That's a really big deal.
Yeah, it is, man. I'm excited. I'm just trying to stay focused, man, and train hard, and prepare to be in with a crafty guy.
I mean, bro, look, obviously winning the fight is a big deal, too. It's funny because I'm talking about what a big deal is just to have the fight be on TV and all that, and you're like, yeah, I just got to win. That's what I got to worry about.
Yeah, I want to win it in impressive fashion, too, man. I really want to put a stamp on this fight and, just show everybody that I'm here.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yahu Blackwell, obviously we want people to watch the fight on the 8th, but what else can we plug for you? Twitter, Instagram, anywhere people can be staying in touch with you and your journey as you're trying to become, the next, the truly great fighter to come from the city of Baltimore.
Yes, the best place for people to reach me is always Instagram. My Instagram is Yahu_Rock Blackwell, and that's probably like my main social platform that that I'm always engaging on. But yeah, other than that, stay tuned. Keep your eye on me. I'm working hard. I'm working hard every single day. So, yeah, I'm going to give everybody what they want to see.
Brother, your story is incredible. We can't wait to see what's next. When you get back here after you get through camp and the fight, let's talk again. Let's maybe have you come by the studio one day and talk a little bit more, as we can't wait to see what's next for you on this journey towards true greatness, man. Congratulations on everything, and can't wait to see you on CBS Sports, all right?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, man, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for taking the time to, hear my story.
Absolutely, man.
And, just share your platform with me. I truly appreciate it.
And look forward to chatting with you more, man. Thank you, Yahu. Yahu Blackwell, a Baltimore fighter who is well on his way to doing great things, and that's a really, really neat local story.
I want to come to Patrick Stevens' defense here a little bit. He's getting a little bit attacked for one of the quotes that I put up on Twitter about about recruiting in Maryland. Patrick did say that recruiting in this area is important, but he said it's not the be-all, end-all. There's only so much that I can fit into a tweet. But he didn't say that it's not important to recruit in this area. He said it is important, but it's not the be-all, end-all. Like, not a prerequisite. People are coming at him right now, and I think it's a little ridiculous.
It's one guy that's coming at him. It's not. I'm not. This isn't. I'm not too worried about it. I'm not too worried.
I just wanted to come to his defense.
I know how Patrick feels about
context.
that. Look, I think you should want to have local kids stay local. I do. I think that's like that the advantage of a recruiting base only exists if you tap into that recruiting base. But I don't know. I'm not too worked up about it. All right, let's do Cass's top 5. Cass, can we do a quicker version of the top 5 this week, because we are running low on time. We still have Derek Gibson. We got to get to Simply the Bets this morning. This thing where we put the gambling show on Tuesday is not great for scheduling purposes for the top 5. But
I can make it quick.
All right, what's the top 5? Hang on. Cass's top 5 is brought to you this week by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Make the most out of every day in a Toyota RAV4, available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today. What's your topic for your top 5 this week, Cass?
Okay, so since I was home with my dad, I was watching, me and him watch a lot of sports movies. Like, that's kind of
sports
like our
movies.
thing.
Okay.
So I decided to do my top 5, like, sports movies that I, like, love.
And Something About Mary, of course, is a baseball movie, as we know. Have you seen my baseball?
Yeah. That's my number one. That's my number one.
I don't know if we were able to do. I don't even know if we're allowed to, like. God, I hate the fact. Oh, never mind.
Society.
I just wonder. I just wonder, like, how it would work today.
Yeah.
God damn it! I walked around for an entire summer with the beans and the Frank, and have you seen my baseball? I mean, I probably walked up to so many strangers that summer and just, have you seen my baseball?
I still maintain it. If the movie The Ringer got made, I think we're okay.
But it didn't. All right, anyway, it was a conversation for a different day. All right, Cass, these are your top 5 sports movies.
Okay, so at number 5, I have Remember the Titans.
I mean, Remember the Titans is a brilliant.
Great movie. I watched it all the time with my family, so I just put that.
Oh my God, we had Julius from Remember the Titans on a few years ago. Not because of Remember the Titans, but of course because Wood Harris was, he was in the Wire. I mean, Wood Harris has been in a bunch of different things. And I said at the end of the interview, I was like, could we do the left side, strong side thing? Like, it was so sheepish and childish. And he was like, yeah, man, we can do it. And I was so happy. Like, I was so happy yelling left side, strong side with that dude. Remember the Titans is perfection. There's no getting around it. It's a perfect film.
Mm-hmm. At number 4, I have Secretariat.
I don't know.
I've never seen it.
I saw it. Not only did I see it, I saw it in theaters because they invited me to like a screening of it when it was coming out. Like you're a sports guy, come see Secretariat. I had read the book and knew a lot about Secretariat, and I don't feel as romantic about horses as other people do, but I like going. I used to do my show from the Kentucky Derby every year, and like that closing scene at the Belmont, like it gets you. Like, it gets you, man. Like, when they just let the music play and they show the horse running and you're like, dude, this was unbelievable.
I guess I can't tell you not to do spoilers because it's been out for 20 years.
It's also the story of Secretariat.
I know,
man.
I know.
If you don't know that Secretariat won the Belmont,
I know.
It's on you.
But I mean, spoilers as far as how it's shown in the movie. But I keep telling myself I'm going to see it, but because I hear it's fantastic.
It's good. It's a good movie. It's a sort of Disney-fied, but it's a good movie. It's a fun. It's a great family film. It's a great sit around with the family, and you need a movie that everybody can kind of find something about it that they like. Everybody will sort of find something within Secretariat that they can enjoy. I like Secretariat.
I just love horses. I think it was a good story.
It's one that my wife watches frequently because she also loves horses.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Beautiful. Number 3, I put Legend of Bagger Vance.
Love it.
I'm not a Legend of Bagger Vance guy.
You're not a golf guy.
I'm not a golf guy.
I'm
love
not a
that
golf
movie.
person, but I love the story behind it all. I think it's a really good movie.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Number 2 would be Pele.
It's just a movie called Pele?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with it at all. I've never heard of it.
It's like the story of him.
Well, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't figure it was about David Beckham.
Okay. I mean, I feel like it was pretty
Who played Pele? I genuinely did not know there was a Pele movie. I'm not kidding about this.
Pitch It Like Pele.
Yeah, Pitch It Like Pele. Was it Pele Birth of a Legend? Was that, or was it just called Pele? It came out. Was it a newer movie?
No, it's Birth of a Legend.
Birth of a Legend in 2016. Pele Birth of a Legend. Vincent D'Onofrio is in it. That's significant. And it's about Pele when he was younger. Okay.
Like how he got to become Pele.
Never seen it. I've never even heard of it.
My mom loved it, and she was the one that showed it to me. And
Okay.
she was like, "You need to watch this. Like, this is something you have to watch." And then I ended up watching it. I fell in love with it.
I've learned something here. I would be willing to go back and view it. I really would. I think Pele's fascinating, and I'd love to go back.
It just shows a lot of
I had no idea. I had no clue.
I love it.
All right.
And number 1, not just because Mark Wahlberg is in
Jesus
it,
Christ.
but Invincible is one of my all-time favorite sports.
I have no. It's definitely not the best sports movie of all time. There's no world in which it's the best sports movie.
I
ever.
do love that. It's not my top 5, but I do love that movie.
It's the story is good, which is what makes the movie good, right? Like that. You start with. How can you screw up the story of a guy working at a bar that gets to be an NFL football player? Like how could you possibly screw up that story? And they Disneyfy a little bit, but they don't screw it up in any way. It's fine, and you just can't mess that story up. I get why you would enjoy watching it. It's a good movie. I don't think it's a great movie, but it's a good movie. And again, it's a wonderful family sit down. Everybody can watch it. It's inspiring, the whole deal.
If I have to be honest, Pele would probably come first for me. It's just Mark Wahlberg kind of tip it over.
So obsessed with Mark Wahlberg.
Say hello to your mother for me.
Yeah, so obsessed. All right, that was a good list, Cass. That was a good list. I like that. I like that list. I would have to think about what my all-time, favorite. Because we're not saying greatest, we're saying just all-time. Well, no, because no, but it would still. The answer is still Rocky, though. Come on. It's almost unfair, though, to compare, because Rocky is one of the greatest motion pictures of all time. You almost have to separate it as a sports movie.
I put Bull Durham and The Natural.
I like both. Both are great movies. And I actually like The Natural even a little bit more than I like Bull Durham. Bull Durham, I still have to wrestle with, oh, man, how do I say this in the nice way possible? Why are we so obsessed with this woman? Why are we so obsessed with Susan Sarandon? You still have to wrestle with. There's so much great in Bull Durham. I'm not trying to take away from it, but you still have to wrestle at the core with really this. All right, sorry.
I love that movie because I've played baseball my whole life.
Yeah, I get it.
The interactions are they're real. That's what happens on a baseball field.
The guy Darren McGavin, who of course plays the father in A Christmas Story, is brilliant in The Natural.
Oh,
do
love
you have everything under control, Slugger? He's so good in that.
With his eye.
Yep, I love The Natural. It's wonderful. All right, good list. That was good, Cassie. Thank you. Thank you very much. Come back in. Derrick Gibson, former Seton Hall player. We'll talk about Kevin Willard. Hopefully we'll still have time for a tidbit and tubular, but we're going to be up against it. My apologies. It's Glenn Clark Radio, Tuesday edition of the show.
Fans, the wait is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. This is your chance to win big right in your own backyard. Bet on every sport with self-service kiosks and watch all of the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Glory Days Grill's St. Patrick's menu is now in full swing, and it's their most popular seasonal menu all year. New in 2022 are their smoky thigh wings with Guinness grilling sauce, a house-made Guinness barbecue sauce. Fan favorites also include their corned beef and cabbage, the shepherd's pie with Guinness braised ground beef, the Glory Days Reuben, and the Rachel. Enjoy a pint of Guinness or Guinness Baltimore Blonde. The St. Patrick's menu is available for the whole month of March. Come in for great food, cold beer, and basketball. Find out more about Glory Days Grill and get your order in online at glorydaysgrill.com.
The newest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, we celebrate the 20th anniversary of Maryland men's basketball's 2002 NCAA Tournament Championship, as Gary Williams reflects on how the program rose from the ashes of NCAA sanctions to the pinnacle of the sport, and why his perspective of the title run has changed now 2 decades later. Plus, Juan Dixon, Lonnie Baxter, and the rest of the team relive the moments that ultimately led them to cutting down the nets in Atlanta. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farms stores. And you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
The Toyota Tacoma comes in a wide range of models and trim lines. You can choose the perfect Toyota to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today.
If you miss anything, don't forget that you can find whole shows later on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon Podcasts. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
Yeah, there's a rumor floating around about a guest that might be joining us soon that's so big I'm not even going to tell you because I'm terrified that it might not happen. But literally probably the biggest guest in the history of the show that has been scheduled to join us here in a couple of weeks. So we'll see if it plays out. If you missed Dave Tremblay last night with Stan the Fan, you can check that out right now, Facebook.com/PressBoxSports. The former Orioles skipper chatting with Stan and Ross Grimsley about his new gig in the MLB Draft League and baseball in general. Again, that's available right now. Facebook.com/PressBoxSports or PressBoxOnline.com/video. Simply the Bet's coming up in a little bit. Before that, we want to get to know Kevin Willard a little bit more. I had the opportunity to catch up with one of his former players who just so happens to also be the first openly gay player in college basketball history. Really compelling story. Derrick Gordon, the former Seton Hall player, right here on GCR. Had to do this a little bit earlier. He is Derrick Gordon, and he's with us now here on GCR. Derrick, it's Glenn back in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you, man. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, dude. Derrick, can you take me back to, like, what your first ever interaction was with Kevin Willard? Do you remember anything about that and why it was a fit for you to end up playing for him at Seton Hall?
Well, this was when I was at UMass, and of course, I put in, a statement saying that I wanted to transfer. And originally, I was supposed to go to Boston College originally, but they ended up backing out for whatever reason. And I was the number one transfer at the time. And what was so weird was that I really wasn't, getting, the looks that I expected, which I kind of know the reason why.
Sure, right.
So when Coach Willard reached out, I looked at it honestly as a great opportunity. For one, I'll be back in New Jersey, close to my family, and it's the Big East. But, he just made me feel comfortable, because, I didn't know what I was going into. Because Seton Hall, I believe, is a Catholic school. So, and a priest just got let go there, I think like 2 days before.
Wow.
I ended up, signing there. And, he just made it comfortable for me. He just said, you know what, we're more focused on, who you are, as a person and a basketball player and what you bring to the team. And he voiced that over and over again. And when I went on my visit there, I just felt even more comfortable. Met a couple of the guys, Kadeem and Isaiah, and they made me feel right at home as well. So it was kind of like an easy decision. But yeah, Coach Willard is awesome. He's an amazing guy.
You had already played, of course, at that point at UMass after you had come out. So you know there was I don't know what we want to call it, but you didn't have to go through the first time, I guess, at that point and all the attention that was coming with it. But still, the circumstance is unique, right? Especially at that point. Right. What was it like playing for Coach Willard as you were going through that? Was it something where it didn't take long before it just wasn't that big of a deal anymore? How did he handle the uniqueness of everything that was going on?
I mean, for me, I felt that it was more of a story when I came out. I think when I went to Seton Hall, it was just more, okay, I'm playing in the Big East, which is one of the top conferences in the country, and playing for a great coach. So for me, the attention, it when I first got there, I will say, because I remember walking in to media day, and some of my teammates had like cameras on them, but literally like every camera, every person that was doing interviews in there came right up to me and was just asking me a ton of questions. So, for me as a person who loves the spotlight, I love stuff like that. I embrace it. But I say throughout the season, it never was, an issue. Like I said, I came out, it was done. I played and kept playing. So for me, it was more, I just want to play and I want to win. But of course, being the first, openly gay player, that comes with attention. So for me, I embrace it. I knew what I was getting myself into when I first came out. So I knew that it was going to come with attention. But it wasn't anything that I couldn't handle while I was there.
He's Derrick Gordon. He's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. We're learning about new Maryland basketball coach Kevin Willard. Let's talk about basketball. What kind of basketball coach was Kevin Willard? No matter what your sexual orientation is, right? Like just from a basketball standpoint, what did you learn about him as a coach, and how did it work with you from a basketball standpoint playing for Kevin Willard?
Well, to rewind time a little bit, I had, when I was at UMass, me and the coach kind of bumped heads, and that was one of the reasons why I transferred. So I remember a particular situation that happened in practice. Came down the court and I was wide open and I didn't shoot it. And he stopped practice and he said, you're not at Seton Hall anymore. I trust you. I believe in you. Shoot the ball. And ever since then, my confidence was through the roof, especially because from what I had to deal with when I was at UMass with that coach, to, playing under Coach Willard and, him telling me that specifically, he just let me play my game. And I think, I think that's every player's dream in the sense, to let a coach just let their players play. And, it just, like I said, when the season was over, I told him and even the players that I wish I had another year.
Wow.
But he was by far the best coach, that I ever played for. And even when all of this news speculation was going around that he was leaving, I actually sent him a message yesterday saying that, hey, wherever you end up going, whether you stay at Seton Hall or go somewhere else, you're going to do great. You're a great coach, a great person, and I wish you nothing but the best. So
I think Maryland fans are going to like hearing that, man. I think that's going to sound pretty good to fans around here. Derrick, his style, it's something a lot of people say, man, I'll turn on a Seton Hall game. It seems like a rock fight every time out, right? What should we expect style-wise from a Kevin Willard coach team?
See, that's kind of hard to answer because now he's going to Maryland. He may switch it up now.
Okay.
He may look at, what has happened. Not saying that, okay, we lost in the first round of the tournament, but that year I was there, we ended up beating the team in the Big East championship. Yep. We ended up winning the whole thing. So I love the style, and his style was more of up and down. But defense matters first, I feel like, with him. And that's one of the reasons why I think I thrived there, because I was more of that defensive anger guy. It started with me. And, on the offensive end, like I said earlier, he just lets his players play. Now, like I said, I don't know if he's going to change.
Sure.
Once he gets to Maryland, because there may be something where, he said, you know what, well, that was at Seton Hall. Maybe he tries to go with a whole new format. But his up and style game I love. I know everyone doesn't like it. But I personally feel from the time that I was at Seton Hall, and the reason why we won is because we played defense. Our offense took care of itself. Even at Villanova game, no one had us winning. No one even had us going to the semifinals. And the fact that we went that far was because we had a group of guys who believed in each other. Yes, it matters a lot with Coach Willard, but what also matters is the chemistry of the team. Is everyone cool with each other? That's one of the reasons why I believe we won the way we did at Seton Hall, was because off the court, we all hung out, we went to the movies together and everything. So I feel like with that, it's only so much that he can do. At the same time, you have to have a group of guys who are willing to lay it out every single day, all on the line, to win a championship. From my perspective, like I said, from the time I've spent there, and he has to get recruits. Someone asked me that. I feel like, the Big Ten, that's, in my opinion, that's a step up from the Big East.
Okay.
The Big Ten is a whole nother level. I feel like I honestly wish I would have had a chance to play in that conference. But I feel in the Big Ten, he's definitely going to have to get 4 or 5 star recruits, in my opinion. But I feel like he shouldn't have an issue with recruiting.
Let's talk, Derrick. Let's talk about that, right? Like the way you're praising him, and obviously, you coming from such a unique background. Now he's at a place like Maryland. You say you love playing for him, knowing what you know about him. Is there any reason to think he couldn't go get those top types of guys to come play at kind of a premier basketball school like Maryland is?
I don't think. I mean, he got me, and. For me, like I said, of course it's not a Kentucky, it's not a Duke or anything, but at the end of the day, I still think Maryland is still one of the top programs that you can play for. It's in the Big Ten. And how he recruited me to go to Seton Hall, I feel like if he has that same approach, I don't see why not. He wants winners on his team. That's it. He wants guys that's going to go out there that wants to win games, and like I said, I feel like that's the reason why we won, because we had nothing but winners on our team. And if he can format that type of group of guys at Maryland, then I wouldn't be surprised if he does some things over there for sure. But I was doing some snooping around on Twitter, and I know you're a couple of people who's not happy.
So let's get to that. Let's get to that, right, Derrick? Let's get to that, because the biggest thing that the detractors point out, right? And I think by the way, and I've written about it, I think Kevin Willard was a good, sensible, logical hire for the University of Maryland, right? I think this was as good as Maryland can do in hiring a coach as Kevin Willard. But I point out, look, I'm as concerned as everybody else is about the fact that he's won one NCAA tournament game, right? Like, I can't ignore that. You referenced that.
You can't. Yeah.
So you, especially considering you were part of the team that had his greatest accomplishment, clearly, is winning the Big East tournament.
I personally believe, for one, if I felt like when I was there, they kind of did us wrong because they had us playing in Denver. And Denver is such a hard place to play because it's hard to breathe there. I felt that because of the run we had, if we ended up anywhere else, I felt like we could have definitely went a lot further. But I was actually skeptical of before we even went there, because I played in Denver, but my teammates haven't. So I was like, there's always that if, you know what I mean? First of all, I got to congratulate to his agent for that contract that he got.
You get a 7-year deal, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
life's good.
Life is good. His agent is amazing. But I said at the end of the day, I feel he deserves it. Now, of course, he has to, prove people wrong. I was saying things that people were talking about. They're canceling their season tickets and all type of stuff. And I feel like, I think with anywhere you go, like especially if you're new, you're gonna have to prove yourself. I wouldn't expect for them to be like, oh my gosh, like Kevin Willard is like, no, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel wherever you go, you have to, you have to prove yourself. He didn't completely change around Seton Hall, but he changed it enough to the point where Seton Hall is a school that people will go to.
Yep.
I will give him credit for that. But yeah, he's definitely, I'm praising him, but of course, I also have to say, he's going to have to, prove some people wrong and, get recruits and win games. And, all of that stuff. But I don't see why he would have any issues doing that.
Derrick, I want to get caught up on you, man. What you're up to. I know you're out in Germany now. I know you're really involved with Athlete Ally, which is a tremendous group. Get us caught up on where you are basketball-wise, advocacy-wise, everything you got going on in your world.
So I'm in my second professional season. Last year I was in Cyprus, and now I'm in Trier, Germany, which Trier, Germany is right on the border of France, close to Luxembourg.
Okay.
So I'm just now getting ready to come back from an injury. I got hurt back in November 9th, tore my hamstring and had a tibia fracture in my knee. So I was out for about 4 months just rehabbing. So I'll be back either this week or next week, just in time for playoffs, which is perfect. I'm living my dream. You know, I was an openly gay college basketball player. Now I'm an openly gay professional basketball player, and have a lot of support here. People support me a lot, and as far as outside of the court, I'm looking to do more stuff as far as like more panels and speaking gigs and things. That's one of the reasons why I joined up with Athletes Ally, just because I personally want to be more involved in the community. The basketball stuff I feel would take care of itself, but I feel like for sure that there's still a lot more work to be done. If clearly I'm the only one.
All right, we're gonna have to end up saving some of this for the web. Our full interview with Derrick Gordon will be available there. I apologize that we're just going to cut it a little bit early. I want to get a plug in, though. You can find out more about Derrick at Flash2Gordon on Twitter, and it's Derrick Gordon on Instagram. I apologize, I ran out of time a little bit there with the way that we timed out today's show, but great stuff from Derrick Gordon. You can see he thinks quite highly of Kevin Willard, which is certainly a good thing for Maryland fans to be hearing from one of his former players, and a former player who was, the most unique for sure of any of Kevin Willard's coaching experiences. So thanks, Derrick Gordon, for taking a couple minutes for us this morning. If you haven't picked up the new print issue, speaking of Maryland basketball, at Press Box, go get it right now at your neighborhood Royal Farms. On the cover, that's Gary Williams. We celebrate the 20th anniversary of their run to the 2002 National Championship. That print issue of Press Box is available for free right now at your neighborhood Royal Farms and in the hundreds of locations around town where you find Press Box, or read it all. PressBoxOnline.com is where you can find it. And you'll be able to find the full interview with Derrick Gordon in the Greatest Hits coming up here in a second. We can skip Tidbit. We'll do Tidbit tomorrow. Very good. Tubular is brought to you by the Baltimore Police Department. Join a proud new generation of Baltimore police and make an active difference in your community. Start with competitive wages and excellent benefits on day one. Join for good at bpdrecruit.org. Here's what's coming up tonight. Just a couple of highlights anyway. Hey, if you've got some time this afternoon, Maryland baseball is quite good, and they're playing at UMBC this afternoon at 4 o'clock. I'd encourage you to get over there and watch that. That would be a really neat way to spend a Tuesday afternoon. Weather's good. Be a good day to do it. If you can't, Big Ten Network Plus actually is airing the game. Blues Capitals at 7 on NBC Sports Washington. ESPN Plus and Hulu for Oilers Stars at 8:30. Preds Kings at 10:30. TNT Hawks Knicks at 7:30. Clippers Nuggets at 10. I don't know. Orioles this afternoon are on MLB TV. There is a Pirates broadcast for the game, and it's John Means' first appearance of the spring. That's at 1 o'clock, again, if you have MLB TV. Anything non-sports-wise that stands out?
Mr. Mayor at 8:30 on NBC. I know you love
like
that
Mr.
one.
Mayor.
Jeff Foxworthy has a new comedy special that's debuting today on Netflix, and stuff and things.
All right, very good. Find it at glennclarkradio.com. Thanks today to Derrick Gordon. Thanks also to Yahu Blackwell. Thanks to Patrick Stevens, and thanks to Joe Banner. We'll get it all up in the greatest hits section of the
Archives
tab at glennclarkradio.com. On the program tomorrow, scheduled to be a big day. Patrick Ricard is scheduled to join us. Marcus Spears, the former Raven, who's now with ESPN, scheduled to join us. Marcus Williams, new Raven safety, is scheduled to join us, and maybe even more than that. That's all I'll leave you with. It's scheduled to be a really busy day tomorrow on GCR. Thanks to everybody at Press. Oh, Cass, plug your social. Where can people follow you?
Instagram, Cassidy_Elizabeth22, and then Twitter, CassidyButler5.
Thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including Glory Days Grill, Royal Farms, Baltimore Police Department, Grade 8's Memorabilia, Live Casino and Hotel, Underdog Fantasy Football, Blue Line Canine, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Paul, at Paul Valley III on Twitter. Follow him. Thanks to Ryan Chell, as always, at RyanChell87. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Tuesday night. Go Maryland and UMBC baseball. Duke sucks. Ohio State sucks too. If you're with us on video, come back in just a minute. If you're with us on audio,